I offer my loving pranams at the lotus feet of our beloved Bhagavan. Sai Ram. On this auspicious day of avatarhood, we have a true messenger from Baba, his student, Brother Aditya Kalavagunta. So a little biodata on the brother. He joined the higher secondary school of Bhagavan in '93 and graduated in physics in the year 2000. At present, he lives in Boston and works there. And he's also a devotional coordinator at Terence Sai Center. Without much ado, please join me in welcoming Brother Aditya.
Salam everyone. Very nice to be here and nice to see all your lovely faces. Everybody is smiling, which is a good sign. Okay, so I should be frank, right from the very beginning. I'm not much of a speaker, and so I'm going to keep this very informal, almost like I'm speaking with my family members, and we'll keep it like that. I'm not really going to be very formal and go into long stretches of speaking. So we'll keep it very informal. If you have any questions at any time, feel free to stop me, and I'll answer to the best of my ability. So before I begin, I would like to place my salutations at Bhagwan's lotus feet, without whom I would not have learnt a great deal about many things. And I'm hoping that I can share some of those lessons that I've learned with you all. And there's many young kids here and many older people here as well. And I'm hoping that some of those lessons will resonate with all of you. Okay. So I'm going to begin, and we'll begin with the bhajan. The bhajans are beautiful. You guys are all very nice, very beautiful singers. So keeping with that, we'll just do one Ganesha bhajan and then we'll start. Okay. Gajavadana Gajanana He Gajavadana Gajanana Gauri Tanaya Gajanana He Gauri Tanaya Gajanana He Gajavadana Gajanana Jai 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 Gajanana Jai 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 Gajanana Jai 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 Gajanana Deva Deva Gajanana He Gauri Tanaya Gajanana He Gauri Tanaya Gajanana Gajavadana Gajanana He Gauri Tanaya Gajanana Jai 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 Gajanana Jai 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 Gajanana He Jai 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 Gajanana तनया गजानना गजवदना गजानना. All right, so Saram everyone. So let me start by saying that I spent a few years with Swami, and during those few years, my relationship with Swami was mainly through bhajans. I sang in the Mandir Bhajan group for a few years, and so I relate best with Swami with bhajans. And I'm going to start by saying that I was really not interested in bhajan to begin with. And some history here. My parents, they're from South India. They're from Andhra Pradesh. I didn't grow up in the south. I grew up in the north. And like all good South Indian mothers, my mom also sent me to Carnatic music to learn, as I'm sure some of you are doing as well. And I hated it completely. I used to think, why am I going and learning all of this stuff? My friends are, playing cricket and tennis and whatever, and I'm just, doing music. Music is for girls; it's not for boys. That was my thinking, of course. So, anyways, that's how it worked out. And eventually, my dad, who was a very spiritual person, he was a devotee of Swami's, and he went to Puttaparthi several times, and he had this wish that we should join Swami's school. I had no interest in doing that whatsoever, because I used to think that they shave your head and they have you do all these puja and this and that, and I didn't want to be a part of that. So I flat out said no. But my father, who's an army man, he was a career army officer, was very insistent. Discipline was something which was ingrained in him. So he would make us do bhajan every day. And, we would sing bhajan at home. I think 7 o'clock is when you were supposed to be at home. And you had to do bhajan, period. No questions asked. You can do whatever after that. But, during that time, you just have to be there. And so I remember singing this bhajan. And the bhajan was Manas Bhajre. And I used to sing in a very strange way. Manas Bhajre. As if I'm afraid of Swami and everyone else. So I'll be like singing to myself, Manasa Bhajare Guru Charanam, and I would look here and there. Dustara Bhava Sagara Tarnam. Is anybody looking at? So I was very not really into the whole bhajan thing, And this is what would happen for a year. I pretty much sang the same bhajan, That's all I sang, and it's neat to remember that that year, which was when I eventually went to Swami's school, there was this entrance exam. And so the entrance exam went well, I did decently. And then there was the interview where, the principal of the school, I think it was Mr. Habu, who was still there. He asked me that do you go to center? Do you go to Swami's Samiti? And I said, yeah, I do go. Of course, inside I was thinking I don't want to go, but I still do. But then he asked me, so do you sing bhajan? So I said, yes, of course I sing bhajan. And then he said, why don't you sing on bhajan for me? And then I sang the same Manasa Bhajre. So interestingly enough, 1 year of practice, and it worked out in the end. I was able to sing it for Dr. Habu, and I found myself in the school. I say I found myself again because, as I had said previously, I was not very interested in going there. One thing appealed to me though, Swami was there, but he was like really far away from the way I was looking at it. To me, what appealed the most was the students were very good at cricket. And I thought, wow, this is a great place. I'm sure I can play good cricket here. So I'll be fine. The other stuff is secondary, but cricket, I'm good. So I joined, and again, one of the first impressions that stands out in my mind is we entered Puttaparthi, and morning the Nagar Sankirtan at around 4:30, and that's when our bus came in, and we entered into the mandir. This was back in the late 80s, And even back then, I remember, the energy that was there in Puttaparthi was amazing. You could walk in, and Swami used to live back then in the mandir. And so there was this quiet that, kind of surrounded that whole area. There were trees and very quiet. And if you walked from the mandir and, into the ashram, there was a lot of peace. Somehow you could just feel it. And my first impression was I heard these people, singing bhajan, and there was Vedam going on as well. And it was a phenomenal experience. I couldn't explain it. It was something which was very uplifting. Not that I wanted to be a part of it, but I just wanted to, see it. It was a phenomenal thing, and it just, for a child who was in the 9th grade or something, it was a very moving experience for me. And from then on, I went to the first bhajan session. And that first bhajan session, again, I was a young student. I was not really close to Swami or anywhere. I was sitting somewhere in the back. But the bhajan was so beautiful. It brought tears to my eyes. And again, please remember that I'm not someone who wanted to really, be part of all of this. To me, it was all very, very strange. And the bhajan was this bhajan. The first bhajan was the Ganesha bhajan, which was, I think it was S. Kumar. You probably might know who S. Kumar is. And he sang this bhajan. It was Vigna Vinashaka Gadanatha Gajanana He Gajavadana. So this was the bhajan, and it was beautiful. I lost myself, and then I realized that I had this deep love for bhajan, and it just took you somewhere. And to me, the thinking process was, if Swami can do this, it can move you. Someone who's absolutely got nothing to do with bhajan and really doesn't like all of this, then I'm sure there has to be something here. It's quite special. We are in the presence of something special. And so that's where my journey began with bhajan. And so I'm hoping that in the next hour and a half or so, or maybe less, I'll take you through some of the interesting experiences that I've had the opportunity to be a part of, and also to experience and witness as well. I'm going to start with a nice story, and it happened to one of my seniors. This just goes to show that one single event in one person's life can change the direction of that person's life. And Swami was, I'm sure many of us have had that experience. He touches you in one way, and your life takes a completely different turn. It's no longer going in a particular direction. So this boy was from Chennai, and his dad was very involved in the Sundaram Sai Center there, and because he was in the Sundaram Sai Center, his father wanted him to be part of the school as well. This was in the late 70s, early 80s. So he joined the Ooty school, which was back then in Ooty, and there was also the primary school which started in Puttaparthi as well. So he joined in probably grade 4 or something. So again, he joined not really, he didn't want to leave his parents, basically, but he still did. And for the next few years he was there. But again, his interest was mainly not in studies. He was doing very poorly. Every year, the teachers from Puttaparthi would send a message back to his parents saying, your son is doing very poorly. He's almost last in the grade. He's just barely making it. And so his dad would come and his mom would come, and they would, speak to him for hours on end and say, study hard. Your career depends on it. And he would just brush them off, even though he was in grade 5, grade 6, like that. So when he came to grade 8, in India, after grade 8, grade 9 onwards, it's very hard. It's a very different ball game. It's very, the syllabus completely takes off, and it's very hard. Unless you really focus, you can't really keep up. So grade 8, he had it was his birthday, and as was the custom in those days, you would go to Swami with a tray with chocolates in it, and there was the clove, and there was some elaichi and some dry fruits and such. And then you would also have a picture with a pen. And so this boy went for his birthday. And he went there and he stood in, so they would allow us to sit in front of Swami's interview room. Back then it would be like right up to where he would sit. We would sit right up to the interview room. And so he was sitting there, and Swami came in, and there were 3-4 boys with him. And he came to this boy and he said, "Is it your birthday today?" And he said, "Yes, Swami." And then he just created vibhuti for him. And he had a sheet of paper, and so he wanted to collect it. He said, "Look, Swami, I'll take it and I'll give it to my parents as well." But he said, "No, just eat it. That's it. It's only for you." So he made him eat it right there. And then, things, that's it, that was the end of that. But this boy, if you can imagine, he says now in retrospect that event changed his life. Because from then on, he says his focus had completely changed. He was much more focused, he was much more into his studying, he was much more interested. It was almost as if a door had opened in his mind. His brain was able to comprehend things which just until the previous day he couldn't. So this has happened to several people. Not in the same way where you have vibhuti, but in other ways where Swami has touched your life in a way in which your mind is able to comprehend, or your life takes a completely different direction. And so I'm sure all of you have that as well. And it's the case with the little bit of experience I've had with Swami as well, where I had simply no aptitude or no interest in music. There was just none of that. But for some reason, the contact with Swami, maybe there was something inside, and that love for bhajan came through. So I'm hoping to share that with all of you. Now, before I go any further, again, this is not just going to be me speaking. I'm going to do this for the next half hour, where I'll share a few stories, and then we'll get into some practical stuff about bhajan, which I kind of saw here. The way we do bhajans in the United States is slightly different from back in India, and so there are some things which we can all kind of learn from, and hopefully this will be useful for us all as a center. And so we'll get into the practical aspects in about 20 minutes from now. That's the plan. Okay, so a few years back, I'll tell you another interesting story about music, right? So music is a way of doing sadhana. In my way of thinking, and probably in a lot of people, if you talk to them, they will say that this is my sadhana. I'll give you a very nice incident that happened with one of our devotees in Atlanta. So this boy was doing his PhD at Georgia Tech. He had just joined, and he had come in one day before the semester began. And so all of the rooms that were supposed to be rented were rented out, and there was no rooms left. And so he was searching for a room to stay. And what happened was there was nothing available. So he heard from this other boy, and this, by the way, this gentleman is in that Atlanta area as well. And so this boy, he came to him and he said, "There is a room available with this guy, but he's slightly crazy. So I don't know if you want to stay with him, but that's the way it is." And so he went to this boy, and that boy was a Bengali boy. And he said, "See, I'm fine. You can stay with me. I have an extra room. It's all good. But I'm going to tell you, I get up at 4 a.m. every day, and I practice tabla for 2 hours. Okay. So if you can deal with that, then you're welcome to stay with me." So he said, "Fine, sure. I'm okay with that." Because he had no options, basically. So anyway, so he took that, and he said, "I'll sleep through it. Tabla, big deal. It's not that loud." But as it turned out, it was very loud. And he couldn't really sleep. So every day, whether he wants it or not, rain, shine, snow, 4 a.m., he's up. Whether this guy has had a late night or not, really don't care. So he thought, I can't fight this. I have to probably be a part of this. So he said, okay, fine. You know what? Why don't you teach me? That's a better use of our time. So I said, sure, I'll teach you. So this guy, this tabla guy, he took it really as a sadhana. Okay, so he would play, say, a tal, but he would play it very slow, and he would play like dha, and he would wait for maybe half a minute, and then dhin. So it was like he's meditating. So this boy who I'm speaking about, he got really bored. In fact, there were times when he kind of slept off in the middle. But nonetheless, he learned the tabla, and much like here, he started playing in the Hindu center in Atlanta. One fine day, some gentleman came up to him and he said, see, we have Sai Bhajan here, why don't you come and play for us? And he did. He went and played, and he played for his first bhajan, there. And he played for the first bhajan, and it was beautiful. He played well, and he had no tabla background previously, so he felt very happy. And that evening when he played, he felt very happy. He felt like, wow, I'm the greatest tabla player in the world. I've played for one bhajan. So he was very happy, and everybody came up to him and said, you played so beautifully, you played this and you played that. And I'm sure it happens to a lot of us as well. And then he went back home, he slept. And that night he dreamt, Swami came up to him, and he walked right up to him. It was darshan line or something. And he just gave him a slap. And he slapped him on his cheek. And he said, do you think you are the one who's playing the tabla? Then he didn't say anything, which is a good strategy. You shouldn't, don't say, in front of Swami. Anyways, so he kept quiet. And then that Swami went on to say that it is not that you are playing, but instead it's more like a seva. It's a sadhana that I have given you. So take it as that and use it for your own benefit. Serve. This is the best way you can serve. And so this is your sadhana. So keep it like that and go with that. So what I'm trying to say here is bhajan, much like anything else, and I'm going to go to this next slide here, is a kind of sadhana. Right? It's something which we do for others. We are not singing just for ourselves, but we are also singing for the people who are following. And so that theme is something we will explore in the rest of this session today. And as Swami says, the divine vibrations that result from bhajans you sing are spreading to all parts of the world. The divine name that you chant purifies the hearts of many. Sing the glory of God. By doing so, you will render great help to the whole world. Okay, so this is a service which we are able to do, and if we do it well, it can lead us to some, it will make us in general much better people. Okay, so this workshop that we'll do today, there are typical questions that are asked, and we have some of them listed here. But in addition to these questions, if you have any more questions, please do stop me at any point and let me know. And as you might have guessed by this, we have done this kind of presentation. A few of us have done it in other centers as well. And so this is a collection of all of those questions that we have seen. And if you have any things to add, just feel free to stop me, and then I'll try my best. Otherwise, I just won't answer, which is a good strategy as well. Okay, so all right. So let's talk about bhajan. But before I begin, I would like to start with a story. It's a nice little story which talks about the spirit of sacrifice that comes when you're living with Swami. It's a very hard life. It's not easy. We always think, there are people who are very close to Swami. They're so blessed. They are so close, right next to them. But living with Swami is the acid test. You have to be very, very serious about your own spirituality. And much like that, bhajan, the way it was done in Puttaparthi, it was almost like a test. And I can vouch for that. I don't have a heart issue, but I can assure you the stress levels were pretty high. And, in the longer run, maybe. But anyways, so the point is that it was hard to do that. And I'll tell you why. For the longest time, in India, and there's some history here. In India, how was, devotional singing done? Devotional singing in India, the way it was done was there would be one singer, right? And they would sing, sit in the temple, and everybody else would listen, right? You were not allowed to really sing. But then the bhakti movement with Chaitanya and in Bengal, and they all started singing together. And at that point, one barrier was broken. Everybody is allowed to sing. If you want to sing the name of God, nobody is going to stop you from doing that, right? And then it progressed over the years. Everybody is allowed to sing. So it moved from being an individual activity to a group activity, which is what we are engaged in right now. And then comes Swami, right, at the start of this century. Bhajans typically, and I'm going to give you an example. If you listen to Indian classical or Carnatic classical, was a much more complex form. So I'm going to sing a bhajan which is a classical bhajan, okay? Darshan dena pran pe yaare, darshan dena pran pe yaare, नंद लाला मेरे नैनों के तारे, दर्शन देना प्राण प्यारे. So it's a beautiful bhajan, but it's very classically oriented. It's very individualistic. It's not, many people cannot follow it. And so comes Swami, and he makes it much simpler. He makes it 4 lines, simple lines. Everybody follows the bhajan, and everybody is able to participate. So as an example, let's take and Swami's favorite bhajan, right? Har Shiva Shankar Shashank Shekhar Har Bam 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 Bolo. भयंकर गिरिजा शंकर धिमि 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 तकना तन केलो. हर शिव शंकर शशांक शेखर हर भम भम बोलो. भवा भयंकर गिरिजा शंकर धिमि 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 तकना तन केलो. हर शिव शंकर शशांक शेखर हर भम 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 बोलो. So this is an example of a bhajan that Swami would sing quite often, and you might have noticed that it's easy to follow, right? Everybody can participate. But the same thing is not true for other bhajans, and that's what we are trying to convey here, right? It's a group activity. 50% of the job is the singer's job and the instrumentalist's job, but 50% of the job is also the follower's job. So when we choose a bhajan, we should choose bhajans that reflect that as well. Okay. So the point of this slide is that devotional singing, especially in the bhajan context, is mainly for engaging everyone. It's a group activity, it's a team activity. And so we should choose those bhajans accordingly that engage everyone. Okay, and it's not just the singer that is the star attraction, but it's everyone. We are all in it together. We are not just we are not just singing for our own sakes. Okay. So one of the things that we would like to cover today would be the classification of bhajans: simple, medium, and complex. Now, before I go there, I would like to give another story here. So being in Puttaparthi is, especially in the bhajan group, was a tremendous opportunity, right? Because you sitting in front of Swami, you're doing bhajan in front of Swami, and especially in the olden days, the folks who did sing in front of Swami, they had complete, they had one-on-one interaction. And even up till very recently, Swami gave a lot of importance to bhajan. But when there is a lot of attention, there is also a lot of ego, right? It's kind of obvious. And so we all had our experiences with that. And so I'm going to narrate one experience that happened with me. One year, I knew that my parents were coming to Puttaparthi. And by then, I had asked Swami to be able to sing in the mandir. And so I wanted to, sing so that my parents are happy. Not because I wanted to sing it for Swami, but I wanted to sing so that my parents can tap the next devotee in the line and say, that's my son singing. That was the idea. So I went in with that. And the bhajan I sang was, it's a Shiva bhajan, and you might have all sung it. Shambho Shankara Deva. And so there's a very high line. Bhole Baba Mahadeva. Pahi Prabho Sharanam Deva. And then Hara Hara Gange Mahadeva. Hara Hara Gange Mahadeva. Hara Hara Gange Mahadeva. So my aim was, I'm going to hit that high line. And then when I do that, everybody will be like, wow, that's bliss. And then my parents can say, oh, see, that's my son, So that was the aim of the bhajan. I practiced a lot, maybe 100 times even. And I got the opportunity to sing the bhajan. And so the way it works is, Swami is sitting there, much like here. And you're sitting in front, facing him. And he gives the beat. He gives the actual beat. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So Swami is always tapping. So you have to be very careful of that. And the tabla person is. And so I had closed my eyes and I was singing in bliss. And the second speed, I sang Hara Hara Gange Mahadeva. And at that point, everything went silent. So for me, that was as close as I've come to a heart attack. And I looked around and I realized the tabla player has stopped playing, the harmonium player has given up his instrument. And I looked up at Swami, and Swami had stopped giving the beat, which is basically an indication saying that you better stop right now. Okay, and I did. So what was going on there was that he's trying to convey, and this is the lesson I learned from it, was you're not really singing for your parents or not for the devotees. You're singing for Swami, right? You're singing for him. So in the end, the focus has to be him. And you can't be thinking about all of these other issues. We are not singing for ourselves. We are singing for him. It's a bigger purpose here. And so that hopefully will carry, that's an incident which changed my way of thinking about bhajan. Because it was no longer about, just trying to sing the bhajan that makes you sing the best that you can, but more about, what bhajan will bring everyone together. What is the bhajan that is able to carry everyone together and bring in some feeling of devotion, one step maybe closer to God. If we are able to do that, then we are doing a great service, probably better than, anything else. Half an hour in a week, a person comes to the bhajan and we are able to transport them away from all their troubles and think about God. That's a phenomenal service that one is able to do. And so keeping with that theme, you can classify bhajans in simple, medium and complex bhajans. And so we'll go through some of these bhajans. And again, all of us are given certain talents and are given certain abilities. And so we have to judge for ourselves which bhajans we can sing well and which bhajans we should practice more before we are able to deliver them. And for that, I'm going to point you to the devotional coordinator. If you have any complaints, you can complain to him or her. I'm sure they are capable of dealing with that. But, jokes apart, it's a team effort, and we should be honest with ourselves. And again, the devotional coordinator's job, I have been a devotional coordinator myself, is to bring everyone together and make everyone improve. All of us should improve together, and that's what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to put anyone down. We're not trying to say, oh, this person, you're not a good singer, or that person is a better singer. That is probably not the aim here, but more we're doing this together. So we have to own up to our own abilities and then sing what we are capable of singing well. So, some examples of what a simple bhajan is. And then once we have gone through this, we'll talk about who's the best judge of our bhajan. And I'm going to give you a hint. The best judge of your bhajan is someone who's below 15 years of age. Because children in general will not sugarcoat anything. They will just say things as it is. So, I'm not saying make a 15-year-old the devotional coordinator. That's not what I'm saying. But I think you get the point. Anyways, so simple bhajans. What are simple bhajans? Simple bhajans, like in this list here, are ones that fall on the beat. So, Jai 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 Ganapati Deva, Jai 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 Ganapati Deva, Jai 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 Ganapati Deva, Jai 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 Jai, Jai 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 Ganapati Deva, Gajanana Gajanana, He Gajanana He Ganapati Deva, Jai 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 Ganapati Deva. So this is a simple bhajan. It falls on beat. So Jai Jai 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. Right? Simple bhajan. Kids can sing it quite easily. So the point here is that these are bhajans which fall on beat. It's a very simple bhajan. Another simple bhajan would be Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So I'm hoping you get the point. It's very simple. You can sing the beat. You can sing the bhajan on the beat. That's a simple bhajan. What about a complex, medium bhajan? Again, medium bhajan would be where the words do not exactly sit on the beat. And there is also some more complexity from a melody standpoint. So let's take for example. Sai bhajan bina sukh शांति नहीं साई, भजन बिना सुख शांति नहीं, हरि नाम बिना आनंद नहीं, हरि नाम बिना आनंद नहीं, साई भजन बिना सुख शांति नहीं, साई भजन बिना सुख शांति नहीं. So this bhajan again is slightly complex because the words do not exactly sit on the beat. Okay. Another good example is Shiva 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 Shivaya Namo, Shiva 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 Shiva. Om Namah Shivaya Shivaya Namo. Shiva 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 Shivaya Namo. Hara 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 Haraya Namah. Om Namah Shivaya Shivaya Namah. Shiva 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 Shivaya Namah. Okay, so that's medium bhajan. Now we'll end with complex bhajans. I think nobody has any doubts about what a complex bhajan is. We all sing complicated bhajans. So a good complicated bhajan is Vigna Vinashaka Gadanatha Gajanana He Gajavadana. Now this is a very complicated bhajan because the range is very high. Gadanatha. I don't even want to go higher than that. So I'm going to stop right there. So it's a complicated bhajan, right? What about some other bhajans as well? Jagadashraya Shri Raghurama Jagadodhara Sai Rama Jagadashraya Shri Raghurama Parama Pavana Taraka Nama Shri Rama Shata Koti Pranama. Again, very complicated bhajan, right? There is a lot of classical background that you need to be able to sing this bhajan well. Shri Rama Shata Koti Pranama. So I'll give you a nice story here. Singing in front of Swami is a big responsibility, right? You are representing him in front of a lot of people. And even when we are singing bhajan in the center, it's a great responsibility because you sing a bhajan well and everybody is transported to a different world. If you don't, then probably they're transported elsewhere, somewhere in New York. I'm not sure where. But so it's a responsibility for us to do it as well as we can. So a small story here. There was a very interesting incident that happened about 15 years back. A very well-known singer in the Indian film music industry, he had a heart issue and he came to Swami and he had heard of Swami. So he came there and somebody had told him that you should ask him about your heart trouble and then you might actually find some solace. And so he came to Swami, and this man is a famous name in Bollywood, and Swami spoke to him the first week that he was there, and he said, get your heart operated in the super specialty hospital. And so he did that, And he was sitting, he was recuperating from his heart operation. And some of our students came in. And they were, going through the wards. Some of them worked there. And they saw him and they were like, wow, you are this man. You are a famous singer. What are you doing here? So he said, yes, I got my heart operated. And, Swami asked me to stay here for the next 1.5 months. So he said, so that was great. And from then on, for the next 1.5 months, he was in Prashanthi Nilayam. He was given a room. And in that room, he would do practice. He would practice every evening. And one day, some of us who had the opportunity to go there, we asked him that, when you hear a bhajan or a song, how many times do you practice? So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to take a poll here. What number do you think he told me or told us? What was the answer that you think he gave us? Some guess. Can someone guess a number? Yes. Yes, your guess. No, how many? Give me a number. How many times do you think he practiced? 50. Okay, I heard 50. 100. 6. Good number. Good. 8. Okay. So the number he gave us was 300. 300. Okay. So that was kind of a shock for all of us. And he in fact did sing in front of Swami, that man. And he sang for many music programs in Swami's presence. So I'm going to sing one bhajan from, and he sang this. It's an abhang. It's a Marathi abhang. Sare bapani mani pa re mapani re ni pa ma pa ma re ni re ni ba sa विठ्ठले भक्त जन वत्सले विठ्ठले भक्त जन वत्सले करुणा कल्लोळे करुणा कल्लोळे पांडुरंगे पांडुरंगे भक्त जन वत्सले भक्त जन वत्सले विठ्ठले भक्त जन वत्सले नमा म्हणे तू विश्वाची जननी नमा म्हणे तू विश्वाची जननी शिराभिनिवासनी जगदंबे शिराभिनिवासनी जगदंबे भक्त जन वत्सले भक्त जन वत्सले विठ्ठले पांडुरंग 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 All right, so this is a bhajan that he sang in front of Swami. And I think the birthday was probably the 69th birthday. I think that was when it was. And so, it was very clear to us that it's his sadhana. This is what he does. This is how he connects with, can be a means of sadhana. but you have to do it that many times to be able to get anything out of it. It has to be that serious. And so that was a very good lesson for all of us, because we were taking singing in mandir for granted. You have to put in that every opportunity that we get to sing is a great opportunity. You will never get, maybe not in 100 lifetimes. Even when I think about it now, when we come to the center and we sing, there is no guarantee that tomorrow you'll be able to sing God's name, right? Your voice may be taken away. You might be in a job where you get no opportunity to sing. There's so many things that could happen in our life which will take you away from this opportunity. So as long as we have it, it's for us to be able to use it to the best of our ability and to do it well, and hopefully perform some service along the way. Okay, so getting back to some practical matters of how a bhajan session should be organized. So I'm going to just give you a brief sense for how it was in Puttaparthi. The bhajan that I sang first was Manamohana Nandalal. And the way it worked out was, in Puttaparthi, in those days, if you had to sing in the mandir, you had to actually ask Swami personally. You had to get up and ask Swami, I want to sing in the mandir, is it okay? And then Swami would say yes, and then you are able to sing. But it's not just you who is supposed to witness that. There has to be someone who is able to vouch for you that Swami indeed said yes. So it's a very complicated procedure, much like the democracy in United States. There is always a checks and balances around. So as it worked out, luckily, there was 1 year that we stayed back during the holidays, didn't go home, and Swami had called us for an interview, a few of us, and we went in, and Swami was talking about something, and this was again a musical sort of a group. There was this man, he had come from Italy, and Swami had asked him to teach us music. Some of us who were in the brass band, I was also part of the brass band. And this man is a great conductor. He's an Italian conductor. He has conducted symphonies at the very highest level. So he's very good at what he does. And it's incredible because, sitting with Swami when there are some other people in the room is amazing. Because he looks at this man, and there were like 4 of us, and he said, I want you, this Italian man, to make them the best musicians in the world. So we were like, Swami, we don't even know how to play the basic notes, and this man in 15 days is this is weird. So I guess by now it must be clear, our relationship with Swami was more like a parent child relationship. We were not so and it's interesting because he would say that, and he would say, see, these boys, they're the best boys in the world. First in chemistry, first in physics, first in math, first in commerce. But, I'll be barely passing, right? So, but he would do that. But the moment the guest leaves, he would say, Donna Bota, you are not even doing enough to pass this exam. How many did you get? How many marks did you get? 4? 3? Out of 100? You'd better shape up. So, long story short, it's like a parent-child relationship. In front of others, it would be like full of praise. Oh, my boys are this, my boys are that. But when it comes to one-on-one, he'll really sort you out. Long story short, I did ask him in that interview, and I said, Swami, I want to sing. And that was one of the few occasions I spoke in Telugu. And I said, Swami, I want to sing. And he said, yes, definitely sing. And there's a saying in Chinese, I think it says, be careful what you ask God for, because He might actually give it to you. And He did. And as I had said before, I had no clue whatsoever how to sing. And, I was just, I thought, oh, everybody's doing it. We get to sit in front of Swami. It'll be great. We'll get to go in the interview room. But, you never know. So it was very hard because it was really happy. Swami said, yes, I can be singing in the mandir. But the moment I came out, I was filled with a sense of dread. It was like this weight on my head. Like, how am I going to pull this bhajan off? Manu Mohana Nandalal was the bhajan. So the way it would work out is, the bhajan teacher the man who would set the bhajans, you would have to go to his room. He was a teacher in the hostel. And you would have to sit and sing bhajan in front of him. And he would say, yes, you are able to sing now. Okay. As it turns out, he was also there in that interview. So, somebody had vouched for me. The bill had passed through Congress, unlike what is happening now. So I was able to sing. But then I sang this bhajan, Manamohan Anandala. Manamohana Nandalan, Manamohana Madhusudana, Vrindavana Nandalan, Manamohana Nandalan. So this bhajan, he made me practice for 3 months. And I couldn't sing. I was like, Swami has given me permission. Hopefully he doesn't forget that he has permitted me to sing. So I would constantly go and tell him, please let me sing. But he would say, no, you're not ready. You're not ready. Every day, for 3 months, I went to his, residence, and then he would say, no. But getting down to the practical matters, I think it's kind of interesting to understand how it would work there. Before you sing, you had to give your scale to the harmonium player. Like for example, now Shriram right here, if I don't give him my scale where I'm singing, it's very hard for him to figure out, how to play the harmonium. Now, so it's 1.5, right? So why don't you, play the first line. Manamohana Nandala. It's much easier, right? On the other hand, if we just sing and we expect him to follow, it's going to take him at least half a minute or maybe slightly less than that to figure out what bhajan you're singing, which scale you're in. And so it looks very, very disconnected, right? So that's coming down to the practical matters here. And so that's what we would do in Puttaparthi. We would have to go in, a few days before, tell the person, this is what I'm singing, this is the scale I'm singing. So then that teacher would play the first line, like what Shriram just did. And then, you would sing. So there would not be any stoppage. It would not look disconnected. So this is one good thing that we can do if we can come to the harmonium player or at least email them or maybe speak to them on Skype and tell them what scale we are singing on. It makes life so much easier, and the whole bhajan session itself will be a bit more, smooth. And, that's the practical aspect of all of this. So that's something we should try and do. And he'll play the first line. So typically they would play the first line. Now again, there's some interesting stories about that. There are some bhajans which sound very similar, right? And so if you have not done your homework, if the harmonium player does something slightly different, you might end up singing a completely different bhajan. You might have some very different bhajan in mind, but then when it comes to singing in front of Swami, with all the tension and the stress, you sing completely different stuff. And Swami, in his infinite patience, and I think Swami has got infinite patience, I can vouch for that, as little as I can tell you, with my little experience that I can share this. He listens to the same bhajan, and he has heard the same bhajan for 70 years. Who can do that? Now, I can hear one song for 10 times, 15 times, 70 years. I mean, I can't hear, the same bhajan 70 years by 70 different people, right? But he has done that. And so, just practically thinking about it, I think, that only God can do. Only He can have the patience to sit and listen to this same thing over and over and over again. The same routine every day. Get up, do this, do that. Very, how much patience it needs. Just put yourself in those shoes. And what kind of a life he led. We had the opportunity to go to his room once, upstairs. And it was an amazing, amazing experience. Because in the mandir, not in the Purnachandra, but in the old mandir. And I'm going to just stand up for a while. My feet are killing me. Okay. So it was a nice experience to, go to Swami's. Okay. to go to his room upstairs because it was very bare. There was really nothing there. There was a bed, and there was shelves with Swami's literature and some papers and such. A really small bathroom. I mean, probably, I don't know, maybe not even the size of that closet. Just very, very small, and no AC, and maybe just a fan. And imagine, he would get up at 3 a.m., but he would not switch on the lights. Because if he was switch on the lights, the devotees would also get up and, they would kind of mill in. And so he didn't want to disturb the devotees even. So a very bare sort of existence. And now when I think about it, I just don't know how he did it. It just is amazing, the kind of life he led. And so apart from the fact that he was divine and all of those things, just from a regular standpoint, to observe his lifestyle was a lesson that he could pretty much do in any situation. He was able to, live anywhere. So some events come to, my mind when I'm speaking about this. My relatives, we are from Andhra, and my aunt is from a small village called Annaparthi. Some of you might have known. It's in the Godavari district. Okay. So when Swami was, much younger, he would come to pretty much all of Andhra, and he would, go from village to village, and he would talk to people. And one of the incredible things that that my aunt says now, she was much younger. She was a very young girl, probably 7 or 8 or something. And then Swami was also, this was late 50s, early 60s. Swami would stay in their place, but he would remember every small detail. Like he would say, oh, last year, that piece of furniture was there, it has moved here. Or he would say, oh, this was here, how is your son doing, how is your daughter doing. Imagine the millions of people that he meets, he remembers minute details like that. And so that, I'm just talking about some, just some practical matters that probably can all learn from. The level of concern was amazing. He would ask, before he would, retire, he would ask, what time do you all get up? Okay. What time do you all get up in the morning? And based on that answer, he would then get up such that he doesn't inconvenience he would come out only such that he doesn't inconvenience the guests. So there was this whole, he's Swami, right? He's got this huge following. He could have just come anytime and say, okay, 2 a.m. is when we'll have, but then that's it's amazing that he would pay attention to all of these things. So one funny story that comes to mind is, again, the relationship that students had with Swami was kind of interesting. It was, as I said before, it was a parent-child kind of relationship. So one fine day, this was told to me by one of our seniors. Swami was in the mandir, old mandir, and then these boys were playing basketball or something, and then suddenly he sent word to the folks who were playing basketball that, I want these 3 boys to come to the mandir, there's some work. So they ran to the mandir. It's probably 1.5 miles or so. So they ran to the mandir. And then Swami said, go to that room upstairs and move X and put it in here, and move Y and put somewhere there. And said it was only like 5 minutes work. And he finished and he came downstairs, and then he said, are you guys tired? So they were like, what, Swami, you just made us move only a few things. What is this? So I guess there's no reason. Sometimes he just wants to shower grace for, So then he said, are you hungry? And so they all said, yes, of course, we are hungry. We ran all the way here. We are really hungry. And we played basketball as well. So he said, okay, I'm going to give you a laddu. And so he materialized a laddu. And he made pieces and he threw it to these guys. 3 of them, they came out. And they were all kind of comparing details about what happened inside. And typically when you have an interview, everybody has a very different interpretation of what really happened inside. So one person heard something, somebody else has seen something completely different. But these 3 guys, when they were talking to each other, they felt they had the same thought. And the thought that they had was, Swami, three big guys like us, this small of a laddu? What? This is ridiculous. You made us run all the way from there, and you're giving us this small laddu. That's not fair. But what's interesting was that when he threw that was the thought they had. But when he actually threw the small pieces in their hands, it was like a huge, big laddu. So, again, these are things which he's very unpredictable, frankly. So, it was good fun to be there and listen to all of these. There was, of course, a serious side to Swami, the managerial side, which I'm sure most of the grown-ups will appreciate as well. As a manager, I don't really know how many people can do a better job than him. To take a task from vision to completion. I mean, he had everything laid down. I'll give you an example. The super specialty hospital. One might think that it was done in 1 year, right? Swami said, okay, 1 year, we'll get this done. This is the design, everything on time, and it's done. But if we look into the history of that, starting in the early 60s, Swami had started laying ground for what would eventually become this huge structure. He had surveyed pretty much all of Andhra, all of Karnataka, most of Tamil Nadu as well. And he knew exactly the geology of the place. He knew what was to be found where. And so there is a nice event, there's a simple instance that comes to mind. And the Larsen and Toubro contractors, they came to Swami once and said, Swami, we're out of bricks. We're out of bricks. And we don't have the raw material, so we need to get it from somewhere. And immediately Swami said, go to that district in Andhra, and there is this lot of land there, and that mud, and you dig that mud, put it in the trucks, make the bricks and come back. So if you just think about it, that's like a geologist, right? He knows precisely that this is the kind of brick, that's the kind of mud, you need this much, and you will make bricks out of that. Okay, so that's one simple instance. He had started laying the groundwork for the hospital way back. He had started speaking to the doctors maybe 5 years in advance, 7 years in advance. He had started speaking to the contractor 7, 8 years in advance. And then from then on, he had laid the groundwork such that this hospital would be done in 1 year period. And so from a managerial standpoint, all of us who work in a corporate environment know how hard it is to bring people together. I mean, doctors, again, bring so many high-powered doctors, so many high-powered contractors, so many of these people together, make them work in a synchronized fashion is a task that is not easily done, especially in India as well. So in retrospect, again, Swami is, he's completely something different. He manager par excellence. Nobody can, come even near him. And again, all of these things become a bit more clear in retrospect. When I think about it, I feel, how did he pull that off? I mean, that was just amazing. So there's much to learn as well from his life. And so that was one amazing lesson that, we learnt as well, being in his presence, to be able to see him work. Okay, back to the business of bhajan. I'm sorry if this is not very... Yes?
You brought up some wonderful points, when singing, why we sing, how we sing, everything. I really enjoyed it. The only problem with the center is we don't have a permanent harmonium player.
Yes.
In order to give a scale, we don't know when a harmonium player is coming and when he is not. That is the reason we're not able to give the scale.
Yes.
I just want to mention that to you. Otherwise, if there's really a permanent harmonium player, then what you say will definitely we have to follow.
Right, right.
We will follow and give them what scale we are going to.
Yes, and you will see that it will become on... Again, one thinks that Puttaparthi, the bhajans were just the way they were. Very good to begin with. It was not the case. It was actually, there was a time when Swami had to sit these students down and tell them, please, that is not the way you have to do it. You have to sing it this way. He would sing it 50 times, make them sing 50 times, And I think if you hear Sundar Iyer, who's another very old student. He will tell you about the genesis of the whole bhajan group, where Swami actually talked about how he began cultivating these students to sing in the bhajan group. There were professional singers who were doing this before, but then, like a devotional coordinator himself, he sat with these guys and they said, you need to do it this way. You have to do it this way. And so much like that, we have to start somewhere. And when we all sit together and do it, it'll be a great project. You'll all be proud of it. Believe me. And the talent is already there. You guys are all very good. Singing is brilliant. And it's just that a few things this would take it to a whole different level. I mean, I'm not saying this lightly. I really mean it. There's enough talent here that you guys can really do it very well. Okay. So one of the other options that you might use is the Shruti box. Please use the Shruti box. That's also another, if you don't have a harmonium player, use a Shruti box, because that will at least lay down. It's better than, having nothing. And again, maybe some of you who are slightly more musically inclined, you can take the lead and change the Shruti box accordingly, and it will be very good. Okay, so a small detail, practical matters about bhajan. Bhajan, the way we would do this in Puttaparthi was, you start with the slow bhajan, Ganesha bhajan. Again, it should be something which is happy. Typically you would do it in a rag like Hamsadhwani, for example. Yeah. So you could do bhajans like Mahaganapate Namostute Ganesha Sharanam Sharanam Ganesha. So when you start, it's a very happy and it's a very nice and strong start to the bhajan. Everybody's awake. I'm not saying you guys are sleeping right now, but these bhajans will definitely wake you up. You could also make sure that these bhajans are not too low. And that brings us to an important point. You could sing, some of us will be able to pull off a bhajan like Lambodara Jaya Gajanana Parvati Nandana Paramadaya Ghana. But it's a very classical bhajan, and those people who are barely awake will fall asleep for sure. So, please keep in mind that we have to do service to the half awake people as well. So, let's start with bhajans that are, and a good example is Swami himself. You hear him on radio side discourse stream, and the bhajan he sings is, he knows it's been 1 hour, right, of discourse. Everybody is sitting there in one place. And it was interesting, in Puttaparthi you have to sit, if you are in the first few lines, you have to sit like this, like a yogi, without moving. In one position like the Buddha, never moving. Of course, I never attained liberation because of that, but I did get a lot of pains in my... So, we have to sing bhajan which engages everyone. The point is that, right? That's what we're trying to do here. So start with a bhajan that is happy, that's fast. And this check mark, and I'll attribute this to S. Kumar sir, who's in Washington DC. This is, I think he has very beautifully captured this in this slide. The bhajan that you start with is a Ganesha bhajan. It's, typically maybe a medium speed. So what you're seeing is speed. This is a medium speed bhajan. And then the second bhajan can be a slightly slower bhajan. The third bhajan could be probably the slowest. And from there on, you have to pick up. You have to pick up your speed. And like this check mark, you go up and make it faster and faster. And at the end, you should end in a very fast, with a very fast bhajan. And again, the point here is to be able to engage everyone. Because say, you are at the last bhajan and someone starts singing Jayama, Jayama, and then you're like, oh my God, what is this? You don't want that, You want to end with Hara Shiva Shankara Shashanka. You want to end like that, right? Now that another interesting point is, Swami would he would really not, he was not, he would not look favorably towards this Daya Karo, Kripa Karo kind of bhajans, you know. Daya Karo, Sai Narayana. I think it was more like, you know, if you want to be sad yourself. Do not do it on your own time. Don't drag everyone with you. So let's keep it happy. You know, after all, we are here to forget the worries of the past week and move on with our life. So Daya Karo, Kripa Karo was never looked upon favorably by Swami. Okay. So again, you know, just I think it's fair to say that you guys, you know, get the sense for what the bhajan should be. Start with the medium space Ganesha bhajan. Maybe take it a notch slower. The third bhajan can be the slowest, and then from there on pick up. Okay. So again, you know, these are some just some guidelines that you could use. We are not in India. I think that's the best way to put it. We have kids who are born here, right? I'll give you an incident. When we were in California, there was this girl from our center. She was 6 or 7 years old, and we would all sing this bhajan, right? Nacho Nacho Nanda. So one day she came back and she told her mom, Mom, this bhajan is very beautiful. I love singing it. But why are we asking Nandalala for nachos? So that's a very valid question, right? So the point that we're trying to make here is that in addition to the bhajan being beautiful and nice, the words should make sense to the next generation. Right? These are the folks who will come to the center when they grow up. So we should have bhajans which make sense. So that's the reason why we should sing English bhajans as well, or a Spanish bhajan. Again, you know, it depends on what kind of breakup you have in your center, what kind of folks show up in the center. But we should make everyone feel welcome, and everyone should be able to associate with God in their own way. If we have a single member in our center who is a Spanish speaking person, then we should definitely sing a Spanish bhajan, because after all it's all about bringing everyone together and to be able to be a part of this communal experience. And so it makes sense for us to do that. We're all in this together, and we should choose bhajans accordingly, right? And there was a time when Swami would send word from Anil Kumar from inside, and he would ask Anil Kumar to tell the bhajan boys that sing only 2 or 3 single God bhajans, but then the rest of it should be Sarva Dharma, or many faiths. Right? He would make you sing the many faith bhajans. After a time, we ran out of these bhajans, and we would have to sing the same thing over and over again. But then Swami was very insistent, because he felt that it has to be a communal experience. Everybody who comes here, just by hearing the name of their chosen deity, should feel happy, should feel a sense of, maybe feel some devotion, right? After all, Swami said, I'm not here to change people from their faith to a different faith. I'm here to make a Hindu a better Hindu, a Christian a better Christian. So keeping that in mind, bhajan also has to reflect that. This is a very sensitive topic. How do I choose what bhajan we should sing? It's an interesting point. So right away, I think our kids are the best judges. We hear bhajans in CDs. We might have heard, He Shama Sundara, He Sai Sundara. It's great on a CD, but in the center, we have to think before we are singing that bhajan. Because how many people can actually follow that? Parde Burishwara He Sai Sundara. it sounds beautiful. It might put some people in, maybe a different state of bliss perhaps. But there's a flip side. How many people can follow that? Right? So again, any bhajan that we hear in a CD, we have to question ourselves whether it is suitable to be sung in the center, and whether our center is at a place where we can indeed sing that bhajan. If you are very confident that you are able to sing it well, and if you are able to check with the devotional coordinator, or maybe your children even, that you are singing it well, then you have to make the effort to teach everyone in the center to be able to sing that bhajan. Right? And so we should sing it together and then maybe see how it works out. So if we are singing a complex bhajan, it is for us to teach the other folks in the center as well, because after all they are 50% of the equation. It's not just us who's singing. Moving on. I think this S. Kumar has laid it out very well, and he talks about what the occasion is. We have several bhajans here. We have bhajans at homes. We have bhajans in maybe a public place. We have bhajans in the center. And so based on the occasion, we should see. If it's a very complex bhajan, it's probably best to sing it in someone's home, where it's a bit smaller of an audience, and it's easier for everyone to follow. But if it's a much bigger audience, then it's better to sing a bhajan which is followed by everyone. And again, the best way to do this is to emulate Swami. If you look at his bhajans, actually if you think about it, Swami can sing very good Carnatic music. There are some recordings of his where he actually sings these kritis very well. But again, he never sang Pibare Ramarasam, Ramarasam. You never hear that at the end of his discourse, right? Maybe you do every once in a while, but typically it's a very high energy bhajan, because it's a mass participation that we are looking for. Now, one thing I should add is that doesn't mean that we should not sing complicated bhajans. We can sing complicated bhajans. It's just that you have to use your reasoning. Because if you think about it, music can in itself be a sadhana which can bring you closer to God. And one thing that I learned from some of my seniors was that how do you feel devotion? How can I feel devotion when I'm singing a bhajan? And this is again for personal consumption. It's not for when you're by yourself in front of the altar. And I found this particular suggestion very useful. And the suggestion is, you have to really slow it down. You have to slow down a bhajan to be able to feel all the nuances and all the feeling in it. So, a simple bhajan, for example. Deva Devo Tama Dina Samrakshaka Deva Dhideva Dayamaya Shri Sai Deva Kripamaya. So you can do this. You can sing for hours on end. And every time you sing it, you will feel something that brings you closer. In fact, if you do this for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, slow, really slow, then there's I cannot explain it, but you will feel much closer. You get maybe into the head of the composer himself, and how the feeling, what was the feeling behind the bhajan? Because the more you slow it down, the better you can expect to emote. So again, Deva Devotama. Deva Devotama Deva Devotama Dina Samrakshaka Deva Dhideva Dayamaya Shri Sai Deva Kripamaya Shri Sai Deva Kripamaya. Now I can do this in my own free time, but if someone is there with me, it's torture for them. But if you do it by yourself, it can truly have some meaning, and it can be a very enriching experience. And this probably is more towards, when you do Indian classical music, unless you do it for an extended period of time, you are not able to understand the meaning of the raga, or they say there is a raga devata, right? There is a god sitting in that raga that you can actually come face to face with. But to be able to see that, you have to do it for hours on end, to be even able to get close to that. So it can be a sadhana in itself, but not in the center. By yourself, yes. If we are doing it by ourselves, then it makes sense. Okay. Practice. It's very important to practice. We should all practice. And in Puttaparthi example, some bhajans we would have to practice several times before we were able to do it. And again, the more we practice, the better we can become. How many of you drive to work? Can I have a raise of hands? How much of a commute is it? 45 minutes? 30 minutes? 30. And given that the traffic in New York is terrible, you guys can practice bhajan in the car, right? And I find one thing particularly useful. There's an app, which is the Shruti Box app. And you just put that in your car and you can practice on the way to work and while coming back. Instead of cursing our fellow drivers, we can spend time in the name, reciting the name of God. I used to do this in LA. Several times I've had the urge to curse my fellow drivers. And many times I have. But maybe, it's probably better use of time to be able to sing bhajan. And you put the Shruti box on and it completely isolates you from the rest of the world. So practicing bhajan there is a good idea as well. Okay. Nice story here. There was this boy, one of our students, who wanted to swing in the mandir. Okay, he was very, very insistent. Swami, I want to sing in the mandir. I want to sing in the mandir. Every time he would ask, Swami, I want to sing in the mandir. And eventually Swami said, okay, come. No, in fact, he phrased it this way. Swami, I want to sing for you and I want to sing in the mandir. He phrased it like that. So Swami called him for an interview. And he said to him, okay, I'm here, you're here, sing. So he said, no, Swami, I want to sing in the mandir. So then Swami asked him, so who do you want to sing for? Is it for the thousands of people who are outside? Or is it for me? If it's for me, I'm right here. Why don't you sing for me? Then, I think the point here is that it's a beautiful story, right? Because we might want to sing, but then we also have to be able to judge who do we want to sing for. And again, if you're doing it as a service, yes. Now, one thing I would like to mention is there are some beautiful, beautiful things that I was able to witness in LA. One of our center members, he was a very poor singer. I have no shame in saying that. Very poor. Couldn't hold a tune. But he had this desire to sing in the, bhajan very well. So he had a drive from, in LA, South LA, to downtown LA. It was about an hour drive. And he would put bhajan on the way there. He would follow bhajan. On the way back, again he would do that. At his home, all the time there was bhajan. His kids, of course, would curse him for that. Every evening there was bhajan at home. And not that, but over a period of 3 years, the change in him from that day, after 3 years, was amazing. He could truly sing. He could actually sing. And so the message that I'm trying to convey here is that if you truly want it, if you truly want to sing, then one has to be fully dedicated to that goal and eventually you will, of course, achieve it. Much like anything else, it's work, and God helps those who help themselves. And there are several cases, and I was truly inspired by that gentleman, because that if we can take that that way of doing things, that kind of hard work, that kind of work ethic to any of our other other things that we do in life, then it can really take us somewhere. We can truly achieve whatever we are capable of. So let me move on, and I'm going to say, in summary, that when you're leading bhajans, let's think about the rest of the center and make sure that everybody is able to follow. Maybe I'm belaboring this point, but it's a good thing for us all. Another thing is the alap, right? There was a time when there was a lot of alap in the bhajan, but Swami cut it off, and there were no more alap. But again, in Puttaparthi, there are exceptions to be made when there is, when there was a dignitary or some important person, then Swami would have someone do this alap. So, for example, Shri Raghavam Dasharathatmajam Prameyam Sitapatim. So this would go on, right? Raghukulan Mayratna Devam Ajanubahum Aravinda Dalayataksham Ramam Nishachara Vinashakaram Namami So that's the alap. Again, this would be done only on special occasions, and perhaps, if we could do it here as well, but only on special occasions, because it takes away from the rest of the bhajan. So if you see lately in Puttaparthi, there was no alap. In fact, Swami had made 2-3 singers sing together, and so I guess he was stressing the fact that we should all do these things together. I'm going to end with a nice story. Before I end, though, I'm just going to summarize some of these things about bhajans. The role of the instrumentalists is to support the bhajan, and the singer is the one who should, lay down the beat, and the singer and the words should be the ones that are heard the most, right? And so the instrumentalist's job, it is to support and to guide and to make sure that the bhajan comes out in the best possible way it can. But that means that the singer and the instrumentalist have to have spent some time together. We should have spent some time together figuring out the bhajan, figuring out the details of the bhajan. And so it's always useful to have a practice where you understand who the instrumentalists are, who the tabla player is, because we have a lot to learn from each other. The tablist can teach you a lot. The harmonium player can teach you exactly what to sing. The singer can, teach you where to emote, what to do with volume. Those are all things which we can all do together. And so it's very useful for us to spend as much time as we can with each other, so that we are able to get a better bhajan session. Okay, so I'm going to end with a nice story. And this is about bhajan or music as a sadhana. There's this gentleman, and he was a teacher in Puttaparthi. He used to play the veena. And he's a very good veena player, very good. And he was a school teacher, and he eventually moved to Puttaparthi to teach in the institute. But the thing he would do is he would get up every day at 4 a.m. and sit in front of Swami's picture and play the veena. And he did this for several years. And his routine was as follows. He would get up at 4 a.m., play veena for 1 hour, and then maybe take a nap for another half an hour, and then start getting ready for school, and he would go back. And so he did this. He would go to school, come back. He did this for many years on end. One day, he had this thought in his mind, question in his mind. And he said to himself, why am I doing this? Why am I getting up at 4 a.m.? I mean, who is listening to me? Swami's picture is there. And I'm just getting up 4 a.m. for no reason. What is this? This seems to be a wasted 1 hour of time. So, as it happened, this gentleman, I'm not sure what place it was. Probably it was Mehboob Nagar or something. But anyways, they went to a bhajan to this other family's home. And in that other family's home, a lot of miraculous things were happening. Vibhuti coming out of the picture, Amrit, and letters coming out of the picture, and a lot of interesting things like that were happening. And so they went for bhajan that evening as well. And then at the end of that bhajan session, a letter flew out of the picture, of Swami's picture. And it was addressed in Telugu to Mr. So-and-so, right? In a small letter. And so the lady of the house who used to take all of this stuff gave it to this gentleman. And he read it. And in Telugu, it had Swami's, it was in Telugu, Swami's handwriting. And it says, Nenu Vintunanu. I am listening, right? So, nothing is wasted, basically. If we truly do it with our full mind and soul, then God is definitely listening to us. And it's a sadhana, music, bhajan, all of it can truly bring us one step closer. And so, I would like to thank you all for being a patient audience and for listening to me rambling about for the last 1.5 hours. I am thankful to Mr. Mallikarjuna and Sai Kishore for giving us this opportunity to share all of this. I would like to thank the Central President as well. And again, it was really nice seeing you all. Please keep singing beautifully. And again, you have great talent in this center. And again, bhajan is something that can bring us all close together. It can bring us closer than family. After all, Sai Center here is like family, right? Anywhere we go, we maintain these relationships it's more like family. Our family might be in India, but it's here that these are the families that we have. And it's another way of communicating with each other and to get us closer towards Swami. And thank you for everything, and drive safe, and Saram.
Om Jai Jagadish Hare Swami Satya Sai Hare Bhakta Jana Samrakshak Bhakta Jana Samrakshak Bharti Maheshwara Om Jai Jagadish Hare Shivadana Shri Kara Sarva Pranapate Swami Sarva Pranapate Ashrita Kalpalatika Ashrita Kalpalatika Apad Bandhava Om Jai Jagadish Hare Mata Pita Gurudeva Mariyantayu Nive Swami Mariyantayu Nive Nada Brahma Jagannatha Nada Brahma Jagannatha Nagendra Sayana Om Jai Jagadish Hare Om Sara Rupa O Jai Om Sai Ma साई महादेवा मंगल आरती अंधुक मंगल आरती अंधुक मंदर गिरिधारी ओम जय जगदीश हरे नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण 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 ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण 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 ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण 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 ओम नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम सत्य नारायण नारायण ओम जय सद्गुरुदेवा ओम शांति शांति शांति
Upliftment. And by the way, Shri and Dhyanesh, you both passed the test. I saw the smile on brother Aditya. I call on Uncle Sharma uncle to please present a token of appreciation.